30% profit margin. Lock that into your brain because it's what we're talking about today, because it's the number that is destroying Xbox right now. And that's because Microsoft demands that Xbox hits this target every single year. But here is the thing. The games industry is not the enterprise software as a service industry. And that basically means that Phil, Sarah, and the squad are dragging a humongous anchor. One that their competitors don't have to, and if they struggle, they know it's going to be bad. Today's story exists because we finally know why Xbox has been burning everything to the ground. And to understand that, here's what the old Xbox was like according to Bloomberg. Game makers weren't asked to hit specific numerical targets. They were told to focus on making the best games possible without worrying too much about finances. So that Xbox, the Xbox that wanted to compete for its space in this industry, it is dead. The new Xbox, well, it is a profit machine that will destroy just about everything to hit its 30% target. That could be your favorite studio. It could be that game you're waiting for. It could be the entire concept of exclusive games. All of these sacrificed for one impossible goal set 2 years ago by their owners at Microsoft. Now, with all that's going on, I'm learning a touch of Dutch because I play WoW with Dutch people. I love the place, love my time there, especially in Efteling. And today's sponsor, Babbel, is how I am learning. It's an award-winning app that makes learning a new language simple and effective. So with Babbel, you can learn Dutch, German, French, and way more. And their courses are created by over 200 language experts. So it's basically like having a private tutor in your pocket on the app. And my favorite part is you can practice conversations with an amazingly well-implemented AI partner. And that means you can basically just have a big old chat and build up your experience. Really cool. It's dynamic. Now, Babbel has got over 25 million subscriptions sold. They've got 92% of users saying they're improving their proficiency level in just 2 months. And after using Babbel, after I've ordered a coffee, I can say, "Thank you, Vel," without looking like I'm a bit silly. So, to start speaking a new language in as quick as 3 weeks, go to babbel.com/Bellular and you will get up to 55% off your subscription. So that's 55% off when you use my link. You can join the millions of Babbel learners who are breaking down those language barriers, and that's at babbel.com/Bellular. To get a bit of tone on this, I need to go back to something from 2021. You see, then, Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, allegedly considered closing down Xbox, just stopping, getting out of games. Now, for what it's worth, Microsoft does deny this, but we do know something important, that even in 2020, Nadella was working out ways to increase Xbox's value to Microsoft. Now, this wasn't happening in a vacuum, and sometimes opportunities just happen to land in your lap, such as, well, Activision. And Bobby Kotick tells the story here. In 2020, Bobby reached out to his good mate Satya to help to buy TikTok. But rather than buy the brain rot machine, Nadella pulled Uno reverse and said, how about we buy you instead? And of course, 2 years later, Kotick was ready to sell, and they sorted out a deal within 3 days that was worth $75.4 billion. And as 2023 closed, the real chaos started. People expected some staff reductions at ABK from the merger. What they got was 1,900 people fired in one round, which was 8% of the new Xbox, and as we go on to find out, it was just the beginning of the roller coaster. The last 2 years have been goddamn brutal. Thousands of staff are gone, studios like The Initiative and Tango Gameworks have been shuttered or sold, projects cancelled left and right, and all of that is before the price hikes. The consoles cost more, Games Pass costs way more. Everything costs more. Even though, throughout all of this, Phil Spencer and his team kept saying the same thing. Quote, "We have more players, games, and gaming hours than ever before. Our platform, hardware, and game roadmap have never looked stronger." And that really didn't make sense to us, given everything else that we saw. I mean, how could Xbox be at its best ever while having to make humongous cuts to its staffing? Well, now we've got the answer. It comes from one decision that was made in 2023, and it comes from a new character to this story. Full credit to Bloomberg for getting the scoop on this. And here's the story. Since autumn 2023, Microsoft Chief Financial Officer Amy Hood had set a target for Xbox, and that was that they must maintain a 30%, quote, accountability margin. Yes, an accountability margin. So, if you don't hit that, you're in deep trouble. And what that basically means is that it's Microsoft's term for profit margin on individual segments within the business. And here's the simple version. Whatever revenue Xbox makes from consoles, games, and subscriptions, the cost of doing that has got to be 30% less than what they bring in. And look, that is how big companies work. If you're not making profit, you're an Ubisoft. And then investors do start getting a little bit itchy, thinking about, should we do a hostile takeover? Should we, do some private equity and gut you like a fish? Of course, even in gaming, you do actually need enough profit that one bad game won't literally kill your whole company, or that one failed deal won't do similar. Looking at you, Embracer Group. But here's the problem. A 30% margin on first-party game services is very much where eyebrows go up. And to get a handle on that, I want you to take a guess. What do you think Nintendo's profit margin is? What do you think PlayStation's profit margin is? Have a number in your head, and I'll tell you in a moment. But first, we need to talk about what this target has done to Xbox, because it does explain everything. Every quarter, Xbox leadership looks at their results, and if they don't see a 30% profit margin, they have a simple equation to balance. Cut things to get the margin. In Microsoft's eyes, Xbox is a group that is spending more than they are making, and that needs to change. That means less spending in staff. That means cancelled support for third-party studios, like, say, the Romeros, who just got utterly fucked, right? Awful stuff. This is them literally being forced to break contracts with studios that have hired and paid for staff based on those active contracts. Crazy stuff. There have been cancelled projects that Xbox leadership loved, like ZeniMax's Project Blackbird. And the reason why is that they won't generate profits in the short term. Now, you might be able to understand that if you just try to juice your margin in the short term, it probably means you're underinvesting in your future. And that can mean you get outcompeted over time. And this is actually one of the reasons why competition is a good thing, because competition actually exists to decrease profit margins by forcing companies to spend more money fighting for their consumers, and that's why we, the consumers, are supposed to win. I mean, hell, the games industry is one built off loss leaders. Loss leaders are obviously something they can't have anymore. As an example, dev kits for AAA companies are not sold at a loss. They just increase the price humongously. For reporting houses, it's the same deal. Now, the good news is that indies can still get free dev kits from their ID at Xbox program, but those big corporate spends of trying to help their partners develop good shit for their platform, those are now a lot more expensive for the developers and publishers. Basically, Xbox's spending has got to change every year so that it stays within that tight 30% margin target. And it's all because of this mandate set by Amy Hood 2 years ago. And for this, the timing and the context matters, because everything changed around the time of the big acquisition. The date is the most important thing here, and it is fall 2023. That is right when the Activision Blizzard acquisition closed. And we've talked about this idea before, that the spending on the deal got Microsoft to actually pay attention to Xbox. Now, in some ways, that was good stuff. They now get Call of Duty money, but, 75 billion deal value. That's quite a lot of billions. But that's not the only thing that happened, because from 2023, Microsoft got really excited about AI, and that meant they started regretting something. They kind of wished that that Activision Blizzard King money was going into funding more data centers. And the Bloomberg report does reinforce this, because before that date, teams did not worry about hitting arbitrary performance targets. The notion of investing a lot of money now in something that would get more money later was, a healthy enough thing at the company. But then there was a corporate shift in how the business was ran and how it produced games. And here's a curious thing. It comes from Ethan Gatch writing for Kotaku, and he noticed a parallel. That Activision's operating margin was 32% the quarter before the deal closed. Did Microsoft just look at that and think, oh, if Activision can do it, we can as well? Which of course would be an insane thing, because Activision was, in many ways, Bobby's finely oiled Call of Duty machine. So of course it was designed to be pretty damn profitable. It's a little bit different from being a first-party player in the industry. Though I need to note that there's a lot of looseness in how margins even get calculated, and that's because operating margin doesn't always include non-product spending. That means things like tax. But take a look at some of these numbers. In 2022, Activision's net income versus total revenue was 20%. In 2021, it was 31%, and it fluctuated between 20 and 30% in prior years. You can almost connect the dots where Microsoft looks at their new acquisition with an incredibly high profit margin, and then they look at their existing game division and think, we expect more. And in some ways, yeah, sure, look at they screwed Halo and have screwed so many things since the Xbox One era. But look, you can say a lot about Bobby Kotick's Activision Blizzard. You really can, and I have. But above all else, I think we can all agree it was a finely tuned money-making machine. It wasn't a finely tuned game-making machine because, let's be real, they made fewer and fewer different franchises as time went on. They essentially optimized everything into the things that they were running that did appear to be working well. And coming off the COVID boom especially, they basically found themselves with live service games that were massive money spinners. But they also had not been investing much in new games for the long-term future, because that's not what they, as a third party, were optimized for. But the thing is, you cannot apply their logic to a first party like Xbox, because even Nintendo and PlayStation do not work that way. Remember the profit margin numbers I asked you to guess? Well, here are the answers. Nintendo's net profit margin last year was 23.9%. The year before, it was 29.3%. Pretty awesome. But that's because Nintendo are laser focused like Activision, and even with that, they cannot consistently hit 30%. As for PlayStation, they had 8.8% and then 6.7% respectively. This is pretty rough. Now, these guys are Xbox's closest competitors. They are mass-market console producers representing opposite ends of the spectrum. And Bloomberg notes that the industry average ranges from 17 to 22%, and that Xbox was resting between 10 and 20%. So it's not unreasonable for Microsoft to ask Xbox to increase margins, especially since the division hasn't really worked that well since the Xbox 360 era. But there's a problem with that, and that problem is the size of the increase they were asking for and the timing. Mandating Xbox to hit 30% within a few years is healthy and reasonable. That is them growing the business. But just demanding 30% now, regardless of what you're going to lose in hitting that, well, that creates chaos. Chaos that we have all seen. It creates an Xbox that cannot do long-term planning. I mean, at what stage do we just look at Phil Spencer and think, wow, that guy's a liar? Now, from everything I understand, he's one of the last, like him and Sarah Bond are some of the last forces just holding the worst shit at bay. But you can imagine from their perspective, every plan that they make seemingly gets destroyed by these insane targets that have been given to them. Just take exclusive games as an example. Halo Campaign Evolved and Forza Horizon 6 were announced to launch on the PS5. And the reason why is simple. Xbox had a long-term plan. That plan was to make Game Pass great value using a credit system, so the developer sales were not a factor even with them having waning console sales. But now they need the 30% target. And with that, games need to be more profitable, and they need to be more profitable faster. And that means launching on the biggest console, where any amount of sales will help move that needle. But, of course, what it also will do is completely cede their ground on the hardware space. Because right now, to buy an Xbox is foolish. Just buy a PlayStation. It's a better console with a better games library, and a games library that's going to include all the Microsoft stuff. So why even bother with Xbox? And what that does is it tanks their hardware sales. It makes Xbox, as the platform that most consumers understand it, look completely directionless. Like they've got no clear plan to actually compete in the game space. They have a plan to make money off games, but not a plan to compete in the way that we would want them to. In the way that would, force PlayStation to be better. And here's the thing. They're not just competing in the game space. They're competing inside Microsoft. Okay, so remember when I flagged Satya Nadella at the start of this video? Well, this year, our boy Satya is getting a pay rise of 22% up to 96.5 million in total comp. Well done, Satya. Now, GameFile spotted something goddamn interesting, that Xbox just met their revenue growth target for the first time since 2021, where they achieved 15% content and services revenue growth against a 14% goal. Happy days, and that sure made the CEO get his lovely stock-based payout. Every other year, other divisions made their goals and kept Nadella happy, but Xbox did not. Now, in theory, this would mean that he would have personal incentive to improve Xbox because if all the divisions are doing better, then, well, the board can better justify increases in his compensation. Now, in reality, it's all part of the same system. It's all part of Microsoft. And it's a system that we suggested means that Microsoft doesn't really care about Xbox that much. And the reason is that they don't care about Xbox as a division that makes games as a part of the games industry. They care about Xbox as a division that makes profits within Microsoft. Those are two completely different missions for Xbox. And for us on the outside, it means they have fundamentally changed. It means that they are now a junior competitor against the likes of PlayStation. And it means that we can no longer expect them to take as big swings, to try to define the future of the industry, to change its direction, to drive new types of hardware and new experiences, to do interesting shit that furthers games as a medium. That won't happen. Because what they need to do is generate profit for their overall entity. An entity that really doesn't give a shit about games. And on the topic, do you know what's an existential threat to a company? Cocking up your GTA killing game so much that just shy of 100 staff have done a big open letter against you. It is quite the story, bit of a hilarious shit show, pretty bad for the people involved, and you can learn all about it in this video next.